Hello, everyone. Welcome. It's great to see so many people here. It's a little bit daunting, to be honest, but it's great. My name is Stephen Peacock. I'm the head of Games AI at Keyword Studios, and I'm joined by Lionel Wood, who is the studio art director at Electric Square in Malta. Now, Lionel has a lot to share with you today, so I won't take up too much of his time or yours, but I did want to provide some context for how Project AVA fits into the broader landscape of research and development at AVA, at Keywords, and also explain how the project got started and why Keywords funded it. So at Keywords, innovation is at the heart of our business. Somewhat confusingly, innovation is also the name of a small team at Keywords that works essentially is a team of creators and solution builders and researchers who collaborate across the Keywords organization with Create, Globalize, and Engage on exciting projects like AVA. We also work with the R&D teams that are part of our Kantan, Mighty, and Helpshift technologies. We're building an AI center of excellence to accelerate the responsible adoption of AI and take some of the do some more of the exploratory research as we build out our research team. And we run labs at Keywords, which is an internal ideation and idea capture platform that is turning employee suggestions into solutions and services. Now that sounds like an awful lot to do, but we have over 4,000 developers across Keywords helping us. One other last thing we do that I should mention is we run our partner program, and that helps deepen our relationship with established technology providers, and also provides a platform for new startups to work closely with our team and in some cases with our customers. So it's kind of hard AI is moving so fast, it's hard to remember where we were a year ago. At that point, ChatGPT had been out for a while. I think most of us had a chance to play with it, do our own little personal Turing tests with it, and we'd also been playing with Midjourney and Stable Diffusion. And those were great. It's great to do these technology tests and to see the quality of the images, the quality of the text that these tools are outputting. But to get a real understanding for whether these tools were production ready, we felt like we needed a larger challenge. And the Electric Square team in Malta, with the support of Keywords leadership, took on that larger challenge. And what they wanted to do was see if they could build a game using these generative AI tools. Initially, the team was just 3 people. We were approaching it to see how much a small team could do. Over time, the team did grow as we reached the edges of what the tools could do, and we started to bring in developers from across the Keywords group, programmers, artists, animators. But the work was critical. What was critical about the work was that we had the goal of building a game that was shippable. And that was really what we were keeping in mind during the development of the game. So although we're not releasing AVA, it is actually a playable game that is not just a small tech demo. Now, when we talk about shippable, there were 3 key things that we wanted to keep in mind. The first one was, could generative AI create a meaningful amount of the code and assets that would be needed for a playable game? Could generative AI help the team hit a quality bar that they would consider shippable as game professionals? And would it be possible to build something that the lawyers would consider shippable? And no spoilers here, but that was probably one of the hardest parts of this test. And the support we got from the Keywords legal team was amazing. If they had their own logo, it should probably be up there too, because this was really a collaboration with them. So I'll hand over to Lionel now, so he can tell you a little bit more about AVA.
All right, hello everyone. Thanks for having me today. My name is Lionel Wood. I am the studio art director at Electric Square over in the Malta studio, one of many keyword studios across the globe, and one of a handful or a couple of handfuls that were involved in the development and project AVA. So my job today is to try and do my best to represent the team and just share our experience as we went on with Project AVA. So just some background. Everybody who worked on Project AVA didn't have a background or any experience previously with Gen AI. It was totally new to us. We just a bunch of game devs, and we thought it would be a cool initiative to do and got the green light for it and managed to assemble a team of people between projects. And yeah, we just wanted to approach it sensibly. So from the outset, the aims were to just try to go in and do some tool assessment, some experience from as an objective and inquisitive mindset as we could, just try to be pragmatic and realistic and give it a fair assessment. So, keeping an open mind, what we wanted to do was just map the landscape of what tools were on the market, identify ones that we could potentially use for production, test them out, and then ultimately try to make comparisons with what it's like using these tools in a new AI-driven pipeline versus a conventional pipeline in a regular game development scenario. So the aim was to try and simulate as much as possible creating a shippable game. So what is AVA? So adjacent to tools research, we decided to have a chat with ChatGPT, and we said, hey, we want to make a game and we want to use as much generative AI as we can. The only stipulation was we wanted it to be 2D because initially the scope was a bit more manageable and we actually wanted to try and make a complete product. So we decided to go with 2D initially, but that was it. And then after some conversation with ChatGPT, we're actually able to define a high-level game design. So what we came up with is AVA is a visual narrative game. You are ruler of an intergalactic empire, and your job is to form a council of advisors to face a range of challenging scenarios. Task your advisors with resolving them, choose well, and your empire prospers, and choose poorly, and it will fall apart. So, now that we had a game design, or now that we had a bit of an idea of what we wanted to do, we wanted to simulate client projects all the way through. So we know we needed a whole bunch of content. We wanted to create some 2D art for characters, other visuals, music, voiceover, sound effects, UI, UX, animation, VFX, everything that goes into one of these games. From a code perspective, anything that can assist with full game logic, and then ultimately, you know, once we have a game, we can test like builds, QA, and localization, and so on. So where to start? There is a lot of noise out there when it comes to trying to find Gen AI tools, and there really wasn't any shortcuts. You know, we didn't have any advisors or anything. We kind of went in blind and just tried to do the best that we could, and ultimately ended up forming a little bit of a tool assessment pipeline as we went along. Found a couple of third-party AI search engines. There was a lot of word of mouth once colleagues within the keywords group cottoned on to the fact that we were doing some R&D in AI. We would just get links dropped to us in Teams, and it's like, hey, have you checked this out? So yeah, it was interesting to try to distill all of this information down into something manageable and practical for us as a business. So lots of spreadsheets and documents, and we split into core disciplines and just kind of went to work. So we have some numbers here of how many tools we looked at. These are estimated numbers. I mean, I remember I personally went on a mission with a spreadsheet for a couple of weeks, and by the time I got to the end of it, the list of tools that I was searching for had increased by like 30 in just the space of a couple of weeks. Last year was a crazy one for new tools coming on the market. So all we tried to do was, you know, stick them all in a spreadsheet with a link to the homepage, just trying to get a sense of what's out there. From an art side, that's a massive number, but it was kind of easy to chop down because there's loads of tools out there which are, mobile only, or, to assist with non-game development stuff, visual generation. So it was, it wouldn't have been fit for purpose. Let me go into a bit more detail for you about what the tool evaluation process looked like. So the first part of the process was done by disciplined staff. It started super high level, cutting the numbers down quick. We defined some selection criteria. When using a search engine, you'll be surprised how many tools would just have like dead websites, or websites not even working properly. No product information or pricing information, or there would be, but it's hidden behind a registration wall, or you need to sign up with your email. That kind of stuff is suspicious, right? Yeah, why would we want to do that and give that information away without being able to see what the tool can actually do? Unacceptable terms and conditions, or lack of terms and conditions. I'm certainly not a lawyer, but I did glance over some of the terms and conditions in tools available on the market, and it was comical at times. But yeah, ultimately, once we had done some of the distilling down, we would pass it over to our legal department, who would be able to assist much better than I can. So just wanted a slide to touch on a whole bunch of legal and general considerations that we had from the beginning of the project and still to this day. Ownership: who owns the content that gets created? What happens to the content created during, that we submit into these tools during the creation process? Like a lot of the stuff is open source. We had questions like, if I draw a sketch and stick it into the machine as part into the AI tool for it to use as a reference, do I then relinquish copyright on that? All of these questions were coming up from an ownership standpoint. Commercially, can the content can the content generated be used in a commercial product? Would our clients be on board with the usage of these tools and accept potential risks? Legal, touched on already. Confidentiality, contracts. How do we avoid IP or copyright infringement? And then ethical, from an ethical standpoint as well. Do our teams actually want to be working with these tools? What's the impact of using them going to have on our people? Will the tools hinder our talent acquisition efforts? All questions we needed to consider. And should we start looking to be upskilling existing staff on good practice and responsible use of these tools? These are all questions that in my opinion, are very sensible and are ongoing. So I'll move on. So what I'm going to do is I've split the presentation up into like big sections. So I'm going to do like core disciplines. So we'll do design, then we'll go into tech, and then art, and then kind of finish off towards the end. So we'll start with design. So you're playing games with ChatGPT. I'll let you read the slide and the interaction had here with ChatGPT whilst I talk about it. Generally, generative AI, or specifically in our case, ChatGPT, it can act as a prototyping tool for designers, general ideation and so on, but it does have its caveats. It tends to be inaccurate or inconsistent in some of the stuff it feeds you. But the team was able to play with it in natural language. So, as though you're having a chat with just a regular person. But it's not really possible to make game-ready stuff without getting into prompt engineering. So ChatGPT, like other LLMs, needs to be approached with specific prompts. Even though you're supposed to use natural language with these tools, if you don't address it in a certain way, it's going to struggle to understand you or even just glitch out sometimes. Recent updates like MyGPT do work to address this, but really prompt engineering is the way to get the most out of them. The problem is that prompt engineering is a new skill set, which requires time to learn and how to do well, and needs to be considered regularly because often prompts will go out of date or break when tools are updated. Now, being able to engineer prompts is only part of it. First and foremost, you have to be already a specialist in the content that you're prompting. In this case, game and narrative design. But even if you tick those boxes, you still need to spend a bunch of time mastering how to communicate with these tools to get the most out of them. Meaning prompting then becomes an additional skill requirement and a time sink on top of everything else that designers need to be thinking about. So using ChatGPT as a sounding board, once the designers were able to land on some prompting principles, they tried to use ChatGPT at all stages of the design for AVA. The two main ways the team found it useful are covered on the next two slides. First discovery was that it's great at playing the role of a non-specialized work buddy, being able to explain a problem to somebody who doesn't know much about it to get some clarity or a lateral way to unblock your thought process. What ChatGPT says won't necessarily be precise, novel, or even accurate, but it can simulate a conversation well enough to be helpful. The other useful thing they found use out of it for is generating game content. It did pretty well with unspecific ideas once they'd found good prompts, but as soon as they tried something more precise or polished, generally it would fail. However, in the end, the team ended up using most of ChatGPT's ideas and output, but had to spend a significant amount of time editing it to make it clearer. Also, pretty much all numbers it generated needed to be reworked for some reason. So just on that, we move on to ChatGPT's limitations. So, as mentioned already, ChatGPT becomes less useful when you need the content to be more precise or concrete, which gets compounded by the fact that it doesn't admit to you when it doesn't know something, unless you force it, as you can see in this example. So what this means is ChatGPT is essentially impossible to use for game balancing or systems design, and onerous for any content that needs to be accurate. Everything needs to be double-checked by a designer. ChatGPT will always provide something that's constructed from familiar building blocks. It doesn't shock or surprise or challenge you. It won't be able to create specific and creative content from scratch. So the designers tried to stay abreast of new developments with ChatGPT. These dates you see here are when we integrated them into the AVA team. They're not accurate to when these features were released. System message is a feature of Azure API that let us basically upload a document with background information about the game. That helped us get over the issue of the fact that ChatGPT would get confused the longer the prompt. So we could cut down on prompting time because we didn't need to explain everything every time we interacted with it. We could just say something like all strategy information for a given scenario, and ChatGPT would just understand what that meant. My GPTs is similar to the API, where you can train your own version of GPT using background information, but the team mostly used API for AVA. Ultimately, the team tried to approach each development with an open mind and just tried to make the most of it over the course of AVA. So to summarize the design takeaways, it can be a good research assistant, but output is often factually inaccurate. It can help with documentation, but it can't design specific game logic. It can generate rough game data, but that data still requires extensive human review. It can suggest themes, plots, and more, but is incapable of being original. It can output unrefined narrative text, but needs human-written content examples and a lot of editing. And we found that just some task examples here, providing unrefined data text for one game event, you will get faster results. It doesn't seem to be able to assist in UX efforts from a design perspective, and doesn't seem to be able to assist with refining game mechanics as much as we would like it to be. So moving on to engineering, I'll do my best programmer impression. Using AI as a research tool. So some background, the engineers that we had join the project at the beginning of AVA, they were extremely talented developers, but didn't have any Unreal experience at the time. So traditional onboarding methods would have required lots of reading of documentation and lots of Googling. But using ChatGPT and AI and other AI systems, we had some success at shortcutting onboarding and skilling up in Unreal. We found it useful as almost like a turbo Google, allowing specific questions to direct us to the exact part of official documentation. We needed to provide summaries of large topics. It's worth noting, however, that experience and significant domain knowledge was required to ask the right questions. Then, experience was also needed to vet these responses, some of which were found to be misleading or even contain hallucinations. So, we used GitHub Copilot for code generation, embedded directly in the IDE, and found the results to be a bit of a mixed bag. Oops, go back. The workflow was great, especially with the later improvements, and found it was very useful to help guide devs towards useful APIs. When used for small, common, and easily described tasks, it could offer very good productivity wins, often being able to provide full usable code snippets and solve a given problem. However, for longer, more novel code, the results were less useful. Poor quality code, which could often take significant time to evaluate, was just a common outcome. Over the course of the project, we had some movement on the code team. We had some good representation coming from Snowden Studios over in Canada. They helped us drag AVA over the line. We actually have a build with us, some of us, on a laptop. So if you do actually want to have a go at AVA, try to lock me in. I won't run away too quickly, I promise. But yeah. They were great to work with and really embraced the spirit of the project. The coders over there were incorporating GitHub Copilot and I believe even Microsoft Copilot into their workflow, but reported similar successes as described here. So engineering in summary, for standard boilerplate tasks with lots of training examples available already online, we saw pretty good results. Can struggle with bespoke code with few relevant training examples online. Autocomplete functions on repetitive or simple tasks in general made life easier for the coders. It tends to make errors which are hard to spot. So in what looks like relatively clean commented code, there would be minute errors which needed to be identified. For engines like Unreal and Unity, with lots of training examples already online, we had pretty good results in terms of assisting engineer training using these tools. But generally, you needed significant engineering experience already in order to ask the right questions and then to interpret the answers. Experience with prompt wrangling can improve your results dramatically. And yeah, so attempting to ask AI to fix bugs almost always failed, frequently actually making things worse. So just moving on to the art section. Throughout AVA, I had the absolute pleasure of working with a very dear friend of mine, very talented artist, Javier Corso, hailing from Lively, another keyword studio. Me and him discussed what we thought would be a good approach for testing AI and art in an R&D environment. So we agreed that we wanted to just have a good look at the generative AI tools on the market and give them a thorough test, push the limits, and pick an art style that would be challenging to achieve through conventional methods, and then try to measure exactly how incorporating Gen AI into our process would impact them. So we came up with a statement to create an elegant and beautiful retro-futuristic game visuals in a 19th century Impressionism paint style. Initial experiments defining and fleshing out a 19th century Impressionist paint style was yielding pretty promising results. We were experimenting with various tools and prompts, and we're finding that the AI was really able to replicate a lot of the finer detail in what makes this paint style so intriguing and rich in really fine detail. No two brush strokes would be the same. The way the color would blend on the canvas, even little nicks and scratches on aged paint would be coming through in what the AI was generating. Even light reflections on the varnish and actually different canvas textures. It was really, really interesting to see what the AI was actually picking up on and incorporating with what it was generating. We did have to wrestle a bit, though, to get some consistency. A lot of the results, we were getting just random stuff in there, so stuff that wasn't even what we were asking for. So the way we got around it, I'll come on to shortly, but I just wanted to address one of the reasons why we opted for this late 19th century style was because we knew from the beginning we wanted to share our findings of AVA publicly. And since we had been struggling for consistency, we discovered that by referencing a particular artist, the data set would become smaller and therefore started to yield more focused results from the Gen AI art tools. This was a huge factor in us being able to achieve a bit of stylistic consistency, and all other aspects of our prompts just use generic terms. So this is just an example of what we were having generated. So frontal portrait in oil painting style, we would get quite a mixed bag of results. But as soon as we just added an artist name, painting style, we were getting much more indicative results of what we were setting out to achieve in the first place. So just a little bit on prompt engineering from an artist's perspective and Gen AI's bias. We ended up with an extensive amount of documentation on our observations, learning about these tools. All artists love to document their work, but I was super happy with AVA. It's an absolute pleasure to have somebody who's actually comfortable to do so. I love myself a little bit of documentation, but I'm a little bit weird, so it's okay. We have extensive documentation of stuff on our observations and learning about these tools, and we ran a whole bunch of experiments. We really wanted to just try to discover how we can get the most out of these tools, so we really, really played with them. And that involved learning a lot about prompt engineering, what we need to say to get the best results. In this process, we also discovered some of Gen AI tools and their data sets' tendencies. You could say that Gen AI acts as a sort of distorted mirror of our society, reflecting our prejudices very accurately. This means that human curatorial work is required at all parts of the process. We ran several experiments to observe results, and AI would generally sprinkle in cultural tropes and stereotypes when using certain descriptors. Overweight or slightly overweight, generating predominantly morbidly obese people was just one example of how we needed to change the way in which we were describing the things that we wanted with AI in order to try and get what we wanted. We had to fight with what we were trying to describe versus what the data set and the AI were interpreting it. We're also constantly wrangling with our prompts breaking and becoming obsolete with tool updates. A lot of effort went into creating these prompts only for a new update to suddenly break something. And every time that happened, we had to do a little mini investigation to try to figure out what was broken and then update all of the prompts. Just through experimentation for what we were trying to achieve with AVA, we ended up stumbling across negative prompts or anti-bias parameters that we refer to them as, basically to counteract some of the tendencies that we were observing. So just a final note on the art style. With us setting out to incorporate futuristic tropes and retrofuturistic imagery into the visuals, by having a data set of artwork that consisted of primarily 19th century imagery, paintings of scenes that captured life at the time, and so on, we found that we had to really wrestle with the artwork being generated to get what we actually wanted. So ultimately, we ended up having to come to a bit of a compromise with Midjourney, which was okay for us because the results we we were quite pleased with them. Because of the nature of the project, with it being R&D and experimental, and because we were getting really rich and vibrant artwork, we were able to actually flex and adapt on our original vision and just embrace this new style. And that became what we felt was right for Project AVA. But it's worth noting that not all projects are going to have that flexibility to be able to flex on the vision, to lean on the strengths of the AI. But it was something that we thought important to call out. So, going to go through just a little bit the work that we did developing visuals for AVA. We'll start with 2D character art and scenario art. This is just a bit of an insight into the character pipeline that we ended up creating. And throughout the process of generating this pipeline, new features were constantly being released with Midjourney. So tools like VaryRegion came out just kind of midway through when we were working on this last year, and that was super useful to have. But yeah, you can see it's still a bit of a process. It's not just going to create miracles for you. You actually need to iterate and work with the AI and try to encourage it in the direction that you want. And then I'll just share with you here a bunch of the kind of final art that we have for the characters. We were initially set out to have about 60, but it got trimmed to about 20. We've got about 15, 20 final characters, but lots of work has gone into these, lots of small iterations. All of the mouths, we had to go in and pose in a neutral way so that because we had the intention, we wanted to animate all of this stuff. And we were going to put them in a shared rig. But yeah, the artwork is great. I mean, I wish I could illustrate characters this good, and I certainly can't. So it was great for me to see what it was capable of. Really interesting vibe. I can't thank Javier enough for this vision he had for the project, and really researching a lot of historic fashion designers and retro-futuristic iconography. So yeah, the real uniqueness in the characters, and yet fairly stylistically consistent. Then, yeah, so alongside the characters, we wanted to create scenarios. So with it being a visual narrative game, we basically wanted to have images that would complement the text and the storyline. So this is demonstrating an example that we had where by using Joaquin Sorolla in our prompts, the artist's name, sometimes it would work against us. So we had another pipeline which we developed where we remove that artist reference from the imagery, generate it using just regular prompts, and then we can feed that back through and apply the impressionist art style like in post. So this image, sorry, is supposed to be like an electric panel to just represent that an AI virus has like infiltrated your systems or something like that. Then I've just got a little bit of a hand grenade slide where I've just taken a whole bunch of art that it generated. These are kind of some of the final scenario images that we have in the game. And yeah, all of these are the aim to complement the narrative of the game. We had aspirations of scaling some of this artwork considerably, so you could you could work with ChatGPT to generate loads and loads of dialogue and story, and then you could theoretically use Midjourney or other generative AI art generation tools to build a lot of visuals into your games. And we had aspirations to be able to figure out ways to animate this stuff. There's lots of tools that were released, and I'm sure you've seen them, which you feed in a static image, and it feeds back out something moving. But it has limited use, in my opinion, with games because the output is generally video, and video can be pretty expensive to have a substantial amount of in any game. So. A lot of this artwork is beautiful, genuinely. I wish I could paint like this, but I can't. But yeah, just flick through a whole bunch of these. We have hundreds of these, absolutely hundreds, and some of it very, very rich and vibrant. and weird. So just a little bit in summary then. Think generative AI can actually help in generating game-ready 2D assets if you really work with it. The problem is it still requires an artistic eye to curate and adapt that generative artwork. At this point, I need to keep reminding my studio head about, because he thinks he's an artist, but he's not. It can speed up the concept art workflow significantly. Yeah, and like I touched on earlier, artistic compromise. You know, if you want to work with these tools as your primary generation method for artwork, you're going to have to flex in some instances, especially if you want a specific, if you have like a very specific vision, you need to be able to skew if you want to get the most out of these tools. Visual consistency of style is possible. I mean, you can see from the stuff that I've been showing you, it's pretty consistent. Although I know that like there's even recent updates for Midjourney which are going to allow us to actually have that even more consistency with some of the characters being in situ in some of these imagery. Problem is sometimes it can take a lot of time to figure out the prompts, right? You can be sitting there for ages trying to negotiate with the AI for it to give you what you're asking for. One thing that I think is super useful for is great for quick visualizations of ideas, you know, like for like pitching or, you know, just ideating with people. Just having that visual complement is fantastic. And the fact that it can do it in such a short amount of time is a great tool. It is great to be able to visualize your ideas. But all of it comes with this big asterisk attached to it, which I think everybody's aware of by now. It's just, you know, legal copyright and ownership is it's a bit all over the place at the moment, and that's something that we need to be considering as a business. You know, how commercially viable is this stuff actually? So, you know, for this section, 2D character, portraits, and scenario, we were getting much faster results. It's difficult to measure because of the environment, but you know, certainly it felt like that you can be generating 2D art significantly faster than you can with conventional methods. But, you know, all of this comes with the big question mark of the ethics behind it, you know. As an artist, do you actually feel proud of this stuff when really you're just guiding something else doing it? So UI and UX is an interesting, my background's UI and UX, so I was really interested to see what breakthroughs we could have. I was kind of blown away how good Midjourney, I use Midjourney of just giving you what you ask for. So, you know, usually I would go into like Google or Pinterest or something and just be like, I want this kind of UI. And I'd do the same with Midjourney, and I would just get just this absolute sea of stylistically consistent reference, which is amazing. But it's just jargon, you know, the layouts don't make any sense. The text is nonsensical. Yeah, but it's pretty good as a reference. On the UX front, didn't have any breakthroughs. Nothing seemed to be accurate enough. I've still not found a tool, stumbled across a tool that I think could really help with wireframing or like flows and stuff like that. Figma, Photoshop, XD just seems to be the right way to go now. I've not seen anything really personally that I'm convinced by that's going to assist on that front. One thing that it's an odd one. I kind of sit on the fence a little bit with this one. All of the stuff that it generates is raster. None of it's vector. I'm a bit of the police when it comes to UI. I like everything to be vector and scalable and you know, just nicely packaged up. But even though the AI is generating beautiful images, it's just not scalable, so it doesn't appear to be the good approach. But then you can upscale this stuff. So you could potentially ask you could find a button that you want, styled that you want, and ask it to res it up to like 10,000 pixels or something. I guess it's down to the production teams and the lead UI artist you got on your team, right? Does he want shapes, or is he okay with scaling up artwork from the AI? Yeah, so towards the beginning of the project, what we really wanted to do was see if we can actually create a UI UX pipeline. So we had a go. UX was out of the window, so we did those manually, but we had a go at throwing in some themes, picking a style from what Midjourney was creating, and then just like photo bashing it, you know? So just getting it into Photoshop, chopping pieces up, and using it as like a big puzzle and seeing what works. And we did actually generate a early iteration of the UI, which was done in this manner. But in the end, once we started getting to more complicated screens and flows, we actually found it more of a hindrance to be relying on the AI, and in the end, we reverted to a more manual process. So actually, for the last 3 months of development on AVA, it's been, or 3 months plus, it has just been regular UI workflow. Do some wireframes, stick it into Photoshop or Figma, whatever your preference, and then export that into Unreal. That was basically the workflow there. Iconography, it's okay at like generating icons. Again, not vector. I mean, you could live trace them in Illustrator if you want, but yeah, I mean, I wasn't really finding a great deal of wins in using this versus doing it traditionally. Maybe microscopic. The biggest wins are for reference gathering, in my opinion. So I just wanted to, this is some GIFs we've got of AVA's current state. AVA actually being played. The UI was inspired by stuff that we had generated from AI, but everything that's been implemented has been totally human authored, and you know, we had lots of feedback iterations and stuff, and the aspirations really were to have a functioning UI and a functioning game, and then we can use that as like a framework to really upsell the story-driven aspect of the game. Was it they say a bad UI is the one that you notice, and a good one is one that you don't, I guess. So that was kind of the direction that we wanted. We wanted like a good seamless UI that felt good, and we can use it as a way of displaying all of these awesome pieces of artwork that we had to visualize the narrative. So in summary, for UI and UX, it can be pretty good as a reference gathering tool. The raster output only, like I say, depends on who's bothered about it, I guess. It can produce usable UI elements. Again, depends on the project. Yeah, and in terms of UX, it can't solve problems or understand functionality. So even though I tried to get it to do some wireframes, and I can't remember, maybe I tried it to get it to iterate on that stuff, but the problem is you're problem solving with UX wireframes, and you really need it to be pretty accurate. And once you get to the UI mockup phase, it needs to be really accurate stuff. So it almost feels like it would be counterproductive to attempt to find a way to incorporate generative AI into UI processes at the moment. Who knows? Maybe miracles are around the corner. So it can assist in expanding on a defined style. So I was thinking about this one. You know, imagine you have, I mean, you're deving a game. You come up with like a core concept as your hero UI piece, like main menu. This is what we have. Maybe you have a couple of other screens, like option screen, settings screen. That's all kind of consistent. And you know, traditionally, new features would be added. You'd work on them, and you'd take that style, that core style, and expand on it. I do believe there's probably potential of, once you've settled on a style, to maybe just feed that back in and get it to generate a whole bunch of mock-up variations. It might actually inspire some new layouts or developments of the style. But I've not actually tried that one, so that's a bit of a claim. Struggles with low-level iteration. So yeah, I mean, once you get to distill it down to wanting to be more accurate with the UI and problem solve, it seems to struggle with the accuracy required. So For gathering reference and exploring styles for your UI, definitely feels faster. It's difficult to measure that one as well. You know, it depends on the project environment and what it's demanding. In terms of creating usable UI elements, minimal change. I can't really see much of a change with just doing things versus how we would traditionally do them. And yeah, honestly, no successes on UX. If anybody does have any ideas, though, send us an email and I'll have a look. So that's it for the UI and UX. I'm just going to cover some, we actually worked with Mighty Build and Test, who's another keyword studio, and they were helping us test AVA. This is some screen captures from what they sent us. They actually had like a test bot testing AVA as we went along, and I got some statistics to give you here. So, yeah, just a bit of an insight on how we approach builds and testing. So we use Mighty Build and Test as an automated testing service. Really kind of easy. You plug in and play. You don't have to really worry about it after it's been set up. AVA is a very easy game to test. It's predominantly UI. Yeah, remarkably simple being a narrative game. I mean, you know, like I say, the scope was smaller and it was R&D, so we wanted to keep the scope manageable. But that made automated testing very, very simple. And builds were built ready to play daily. It was great. You know, we could basically speak to Mighty and say what frequency we wanted builds, and I would log into, because they're in Australia, and I would log in, and I'm in Malta. So, you know, I would log in and there would just be an automated message in Teams to say, hey, there's a new AVA build to play, which is awesome. You know, it's really good to be able to have that. And just some statistics here. So from January to March this year, Mighty generated 433 builds, tested 172 versions, 3,006 hours tested. Total bugs found 20,000, but total unique bugs found 45. And I'm told that's because we weren't fixing them, and it just kept finding them. But I think they fixed now, right, Maria? Awesome. So I'm gonna start closing now. Untapped potential. There was a few areas of AVA which we felt deserved probably a little bit more attention, but it was a R&D project. We were using bench resource, people between projects, so we weren't able to assemble the perfect team to do the game. So certain areas still require attention, and this is stuff we want to be focusing on because there's a desire for us to, you know, keep looking into generative AI. This isn't a one and done thing. You know, we need to be staying on top of this stuff and doing it sensibly. Audio, we did some minor investigations and into animation, but I struggled to fit everything into this presentation, and felt like we'd like to have an opportunity to talk about those in a bit more detail at another time in the future. UI UX, I'm going to persist with that one. I'd like to see some improvements in that, and then yeah, localization and yeah, testing localization as well. So yeah, so key takeaways really from my perspective and from the team's perspective. We can see valid use cases for Gen AI in game development. We can, but it has caveats, you know, legal, ethical considerations that must be considered. You know, as a business, we need to be approaching this sensibly. Clear efficiency gains are possible, but not always attainable. Simple tasks can be accelerated, but complex work still requires specialist knowledge. Learning how to get the best out of these tools will be key. And the tools can actually enhance the creative process. You know, using it as a sounding board, as seen earlier. I mean, that's essentially replicating something that I did. You know, when I was creating UI mockups back in the day, I would always call up my boss at the time and just be like, "Tell me, how bad is it?" You know, and just be honest and just give me a different perspective. So it's nice to be able to have that bit of sounding board, and in that way, by giving you that different perspective, it does enhance. You know, or at least could be argued to be able to elevate the quality of the final thing. The problem is that the AI it lacks the emotional intelligence that humans use to judge quality. So it will just relentlessly spit out stuff, but it doesn't actually know itself whether it's good or not. So we still need to be the judge. And then finally, staying on top of developments will be vital. So I just have a couple of things I'm going to say before I hand back to Stephen. You know, I'm not standing here as an authority in AI. I'm just standing here to represent game devs. This was a really cool project. You know, we got to, you know, the fact that I'm here able to actually share with you what we were up to on our journey of looking to this world of new technology. I just want to thank Keywords and everybody else involved, the team. You know, like we say, there was people involved from all over the place. Keywords is a global business, so it was really interesting. We had people from all over the place who joined in for this project. The fact that we were allowed to explore and experiment in a safe environment, which allowed room to fail and you know, fail in the journey of potentially finding some success. It's also important to have that comfort and support when exploring and experimenting with something new. It was a great opportunity to collaborate, a real global effort from Canada, West Coast Canada, all the way over to Asia. Honestly, it was really cool. Yeah, so thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. We do actually have some builds on the laptops, like I said. It's also on display at the Keywords booth, so go check it out. And feel free to grab me for a little demo if my laptop battery is still alive. So thank you all very much. Thanks.
Well, so to wrap things up a little bit, Lionel's spoken for the team and what they felt they learned. As an organization, I think one of the takeaways, a couple of takeaways for us, is the importance of these larger trials, right? It's a real investment by the organization, but when you look at what a team is able to learn over the course of a project like this, Lionel is just one of the team members. Every single member of the team has learned so much about these tools. And even if some of them are not enterprise production ready yet, some of them may never be, but the way those tools are evolving, it's important to understand them, to understand the gaps, to understand where we can start to expect some benefit in enterprise production, and also to be able to talk to these vendors about where the gaps are in their systems so that we can help them improve their technology. So the small tests that I talked about that so many of us have done at the beginning, I think what was really impactful was seeing how much the team learned from the process of building a full game. And so it was fantastic that we were able to take that opportunity, and also that the team were not ML technologists who were looking to showcase a particular product. We learned a lot about, as Lionel covered, we learned an awful lot about how to evaluate these tools, both from their technical capabilities, but also their ethical, where they stand ethically, and we learned what questions to ask, and that's ongoing. But as an organization, Keywords got, I think, so much out of this project, and I want to thank the team and leadership for supporting the project. It was really a large undertaking, and considering that it is just research, it was a real pleasure as someone who comes from the ML side to be able to participate in a project like this and really see what happens when these tools get put in the hands of really talented creators. So I want to thank you on that point. Thank everyone on that for paying attention to us and watching our presentation. What's next? We're going to continue to work on this kind of project at Keywords. We're doing research at every level of AI. And we're also going to be, as Lionel says, sharing more details about AVA and more details about some of our other research projects over the course of the year. So thank you very much.